Now, if cows are out roaming around on the prairie, just like we see here, the beef is not only lower in fat, higher in protein, but it also has less concentration of toxins, and the animals need much less antibiotics or hormones within their food. Okay, so this is your typical finishing that you're going to see for the last 3 months of the animal's life. They're pretty unhappy. They're packed in tiny areas like we just saw in the photo, and they're going to be trucked across the country to be taken to those feedlots to begin with, and then they're going to be butchered at a facility that may be a mile away from the feedlot. Okay, so the animals are right next to where they're going to be killed. What you tend to see is that higher fat content that makes it a lot easier for preparation. So you do have to work with specific markets that know how to prepare and use grass-fed beef. It may be something that you need to really connect to your final consumer or even the chefs that are preparing these meals. Okay, these are some of the downfalls of finishing, and it's basically when you go to any restaurant, when you go to any normal store and you purchase something that is a meat product, especially if it's beef, these animals probably didn't have a healthy life. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the #1 leading contaminant or water pollutant in the United States is meat production. Okay, it's not just beef, it's chicken, or all the poultry, and especially pork. Okay, so if you can try and source your meat from something that is a local source that's more sustainable, you're not only doing better for yourself, but you're doing a lot better for the environment and for future generations. Okay, now to think about how Olney could go about something like this. First of all, I was told the beef that we ate yesterday, it was from not only Olney, but I noticed on the packages when they brought it out to thaw, it was processed at your local butcher. Okay, so you have this fantastic opportunity that there are many regions throughout the United States that no longer have a small butcher. That's because there's a large corporate entity called IBP, and this beef producer controls most of the U.S. beef industry. And they're probably the ones that are buying the cows or the steer from the local area that are taking them to finishing and feedlots and then butchering them and selling the meat back to you for a very high price. Okay, so what you're paying for is the unhealthy and unhappy last 3 months of that animal's life. You're paying for a very factory butchering process that probably doesn't really have much concern for the livelihood or the last few moments of that animal's life. And most of all, there's a lot of people that are working at those that are paid below minimum wage prices to be in danger, and a lot of them are illegal immigrants. And I think it's fantastic that people come to the United States that seek a new life, but many of these people do not speak English and cannot legally protect themselves when they're injured at these beef processing facilities, and they may earn less than a living wage because of the region that they're living at, and also they seldom get paid proper overtime hours. Okay, so you can support your local community by raising beef, processing it at the local facility, and because you've already done that, you know how to do it. You know how to prepare great meat, which is what we ate last night for dinner. But if you want to encourage people to do the same thing, then you have to find a way to make it a little more feasible. Okay, so you could grow, you could look at different markets, something a little bit bigger. It could just be the farmer's market in the area, which I've been told are only selling vegetables. If you want to try and have something that processes and sells back to the local community, it wouldn't take a lot of advertising. Most of the people I know that have worked with grass-fed basically just survive on word of mouth because there is plenty of demand out there. And there may well be in your own community. Okay? You can take it a step further, and what I have up here, CSAs, community-supported agriculture, those are usually vegetable gardens that will exist in some of the metropolitan areas, Columbus, Cleveland, and maybe you want to truck it all the way to Pittsburgh. But if people they become members of a CSA, or they're also working together with the local farmers market, there usually is very limited beef options available. So you could go ahead and capitalize on that. And then the other thing, you could definitely look for whole food stores. Appetit Catering is a business that I had friends, and I will share with you, the information is not my full research with the grass-fed beef. I had a close friend who's from Oregon, and her family raises beef, and she educated me about this finishing process, a lot of the feedlots and some of the costs involved. You can go ahead and read Omnivore's Dilemma, which is Michael Pollan's book, and look into ways that you might be able to not only know more about your beef production or what you're eating, but find ways to improve it. Okay? So Bon Appetit is a catering program through Ivy League schools across the Northeast, and they are looking for meat to levels that probably half the state of Ohio could provide for them for the demand that they're seeking for grass-fed beef. Okay? Now, I'm close. Okay. So the last thing here are funding sources. Someone commented yesterday, well, it's so expensive and we don't have the funds to start up. Well, I'll tell you, when I first went to the Amazon, I had $2,000 for my first 2 years there, total, okay, to get started. We had less than $20,000 for our first 4 years initiating the cooperative, but we had over $60,000 of sales for the handcrafts. And if you want to look into it, there are funds available from the USDA. They're right here on the slide. There's up to $100,000 available in grants, and you only have to put in 10%, okay, on your own. So you could have $10,000, and then the government will help match that if you have a great idea and a good business plan. And there are other groups that you could go to seek for funding. And if students want to look into this, or people that are help coordinating the program, you do have many opportunities available. And what I will say for funding is you're best off if you try something small like you did with the beef that we ate last night, and use that as an example. But if you just walk around saying, oh, well, I have this plan, I want funding for it, no one's going to take a big interest in it. You need to, on your own, make an effort, demonstrate success, however small it is, and say that you can use that to build from it. Okay? So that's my presentation. I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you very much to both Amy and Judy. So Promise is about to bring some note cards up with questions. If you have other questions, raise your hand and Promise will take them. And then, Amy and Judy, what do you think? How far does this cord stretch? Not very far. I was going to say, what if we all stand or sit as needed? Okay, so give me just a moment here.
Problem solvers.
Right, okay. Let me see. Have folks written questions for Judy as well? They're coming. Okay. You've both given us a lot. Where's that mic? She gathered up questions after. Okay. You've both given us a lot to think about. Give us a moment here. Okay. Sorry. Great. So there's several. I got you now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Why don't I sit between you two? Thanks, everybody, for your patience. So there are several questions, Amy, for you, under a heading that we might call maintaining values or compromising values. One question is, can Whole Foods continue to grow without losing sight of its core values? How large can it get while maintaining those values?
That's an excellent question. The goal is to continue to grow and to enter as many markets as we can, to bring what we have to offer to as many people as we can. Like I said before, it's all about balance. And during the economic downturn of the past few years, we stopped growing. We recognized that it was time to maintain, and sure, yes. We recognized it was time to maintain what we were doing, and and not grow when we weren't certain that the market could handle it. And it's only been in the last few months that we've started to reinvestigate some of the potential locations for new stores. As we see our sales coming back up, we feel pretty confident that we can move forward with those stores that have been in the works for the past 5 to 10 years. So we're starting to see that growth come back, and it's always about balance. And with every decision to grow, we recheck those core values. And I feel very confident that we aren't going to do anything that will compromise those core values in the growth process. We haven't thus far, so I see promise for the future.
You can stay standing. Amy, could you explain to what extent you make room in your inventory for local suppliers? Is procurement, as much as possible, from local sources a potential core value in addition to the win-win value with suppliers?
Also a good question. Let me see that again. Thank you. So making room in our inventory for local suppliers, that's something that we do every single day, at least in the Durham store where I have my eyes on the inventory all the time. We have local shows once a year where new local suppliers, farmers, manufacturers, whatever, can come to these shows. The last one that I went to was at the North Carolina State Fairgrounds. We filled up an entire agricultural room full of people that wanted to get their products into our stores. We had the opportunity to share with them what our quality standards would require of them in order to get their products in their stores. Sometimes it requires an ingredient change from something that's artificial in their ingredient list to something that's more natural. We have helped mentor them through that process of what they have to do to get the product into our store. And as a potential core value, I think it's one of those things that is so very different from store to store that it would be hard to quantify what our goal is within each store, within each market. Our goal is to have as much as possible, but in Durham, North Carolina, it's really easy to fill our shelves full of local products because there's so many local entrepreneurs right around us that want to get their products in the store. But in other areas, even just 5 hours away by car in Atlanta, Georgia, there aren't nearly as many local suppliers as there are in North Carolina. So it's going to vary differently from store to store, but every store is open to hearing from their local vendors and encourage local vendors to speak up when they have a product they think would be of value to our customers. Does that answer that question? Okay.
Thanks. Promise, do you have questions for Judy as well? Maybe I could be thinking about those as Amy answers her next question. So Amy, the next question is about the effect that Whole Foods Market may have on local businesses. And the person writing the question says, Whole Foods has put many small local businesses out of business. Isn't this exactly what Olney is against?
Okay, that's a good one. I think that in some situations it's certainly true that a Whole Foods Market coming into town will overshadow a smaller business, and it is certainly something that we don't want to see happen. The reason that Whole Foods Market has grown to the size that it is because we have merged with many of the local producers or the local stores and businesses that would have potentially been our competition had we moved into town. And so the last big merger that we had was with Wild Oats, which you may or may not have heard about. But Wild Oats was had a couple or over 100 stores that some of them were in the same market as Whole Foods Market, and they kind of merged into one store, and some of them are still very viable, are taking on the Whole Foods Market name at this point, and are transitioning into a Whole Foods Market store. So